hello there. It's your girl, Valerie Mason Chase. I know it's been a few weeks, but we are back. We are back. We are back. And I have with me tonight.
I'm back.
We try you think you're auto translated now, right?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I got my cookie man with me this evening. And I also have two of our esteemed panelists. I have my sister from another mister, Miss Deanne Weaver, my counseling colleague. Say hello, everybody. Welcome, Deanne.
Hello, everyone.
And I also have my ride or die friend from back in the day, Nicole Brown Young. Welcome, Nicole.
Evening, everyone.
So, we have what I believe is a very, very interesting topic for this evening. And I know our special guest asked me why I considered having addressing this topic on our platform. And what I said is, I really didn't know much about polyamory at all. In fact, I had a couple that I was counseling about a year ago. And when the male partner, he said something about poly. And I said, well, who is she? Because I see only you and your partner here. And I'm saying, well, who was poly? And he said, we are in a polyamorous relationship. And I had no clue what that was. And I also, as I said earlier, I'm not sure that I was completely judgment free when I counseled that client. So feeling that or believing that the practice of polyamory is on the rise, I know that at some point I'm going to either have a polyamorous couple or individual as a client, or maybe even as a friend. So I think it behooves me, especially as a counselor, because we are to approach every client with a sense of cultural humility. And matter of fact, in one of our clinical meetings not too long ago, we had a training on cultural humility and how that differs from cultural competence. And cultural competence is focused on the difference of the other and learning about what that otherness is, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender identification, whatever it is. But with cultural humility, the focus is on ourselves and doing some self-reflection and being honest with ourselves about what our thoughts are. It also does include learning what the differences are with the other. It also includes that. So I think as counselors, we have a responsibility to be honest with ourselves about where we are. Exactly. When we have a client who has some otherness that we either are ignorant about or uncomfortable with, and to be honest about it. Would you agree with that, Deanne?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, so that being the case, I wanted to have this discussion on polyamory. So I'm going to bring on our special guest for this evening, Evita, Lavitaloca, Sawyers. So I'm going to bring Evita onto the screen. Hey, Evita.
Hi, hello, good evening. Thank you for inviting me on to speak. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, as am I. So I know Evita is here to educate us. But before we start, I want to ask you guys, what, if anything, is your knowledge about polyamory? I want to ask Nicole and Deanne.
As I said earlier, I had no knowledge. All I heard was polygamy and in relation to the Mormon church, that kind of thing growing up. Mm-hmm. And once I got, the topic and information, I was able to look up some things. I said, oh, I really don't know a lot about this. And now, I said, oh, I've never heard of this term. I looked it up. And some of the things I think I've actually done in my past that I didn't know was like when I went to college, I didn't want a boyfriend. And so I knew if I met up with a guy, I knew he had other women. But this polyamory says that you are multiple romantic relationships with the consent of all people involved. Sometimes you didn't have the consent of everybody involved. That was the problem. So, and I felt that way when I went to college. He can date other people because I'm not ready to settle down. I'm just out of
Yeah.
my mom's house. I need to get to know myself. So no, even though I got married in college, that's the funny thing about it. So having these different terms, like I said, I'm here to learn. Like I said, some of these things I think I've done, but didn't have a title to it.
Yeah.
We see people at work that do the same thing. So I'm like, oh, is this the same thing when I meet my Muslim sister who says her husband has another family? Is that what it means? So I'm here to learn tonight because I think I'm in it, but I don't recognize the specifics of it.
Got it. What about you, Dee? What's your knowledge, if any, about polyamory?
Val, I grew up in the country under a rock. I have no idea what you're talking about. So it'll be educational for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, as it will be for me and Frank as well, and probably those who.
What makes you think
Well,
it's
that's
educational
right.
for me?
I shouldn't speak for you,
Even
right?
ask. Come on. I mean, you're right, but
Listen, when you have lived with someone for 42 years, I think it's safe to say I kind of know what you know to some degree. Now, obviously, there's some stuff he knows that I don't know he knows, but I think it's safe to say you didn't know too much about polyamory because he had to ask me how to pronounce it. So I think he ain't know nothing about it.
Never heard of it. When I saw the post, I said, "What the heck is this?" And sometimes when you see something that's new, you never heard of, you kind of don't even want to find out because it requires you to maybe get in a position of being uncomfortable about could be anything.
Yeah.
So you shy away from it because if you would have asked me, because actually when she asked me if I wanted to be on the show, my inside was saying I'm not really interested. Well, no. But then I said, okay, because knowledge is power. Because I might run into someone that's having a conversation.
That's
at
right.
least not able to participate to some degree.
I have an intelligent conversation with them. And not only that, one of my beliefs is that we as human beings should learn something new every single day. This could be your thing. Whoever is watching, whether now or later, this could be your thing. So, Evita, I want to ask you, I want to start by defining terms so I can make sure that we're all on the same page. So if you could help us understand polyamory, polyandry, and non-monogamy. I don't know if they're used interchangeably or not, but you could help us out there.
No, they're not used interchangeably. So non-monogamy is the umbrella term. And underneath non-monogamy is various forms of non-monogamy. So we have monogamy. So if you think of monogamy and non-monogamy as like a binary or like a spectrum, with monogamy being on one end of the spectrum and non-monogamy being on the other end of the spectrum. And then underneath the umbrella of non-monogamy are various forms. So you have open relationships, you have swinging, you have some, not all forms of kink and BDSM can fall under the category of non-monogamy because there are people that have multiple kink and BDSM relationships with multiple people. There is polygamy, polyandry, multiple marriages, things of that nature. So that's generally what you see in like the Muslim communities, Mormon communities. And so a relationship anarchy is another, relationship anarchy. It's more of a relationship philosophy kind of, but a lot of relationship anarchists also identify as non-monogamous. So sometimes that falls under the umbrella term as well. And so non-monogamy just simply means not monogamous. And then there are various forms of non-monogamy underneath that umbrella. Polyamory generally tends to be defined as a person having multiple loving relationships with the consent of all parties involved. So that's generally how that is defined. It's different from open relationships. Open relationships are usually a little bit casual. They usually center on there's a primary couple, and then each person has the freedom to sort of casually interact with other people. They might go on a date, they might be on a business trip and, spend the night with someone that they met in a bar, but they don't necessarily seek partnership. Whereas in polyamory, usually what you see is a seeking of partnership and a seeking of multiple partnerships is generally what you find in polyamory. With the focus on, establishing multiple committed, loving relationships is generally what you find in polyamory. And then polyandry is, I believe polyandry is multiple husbands, if I'm not mistaken. So I think polyandry is multiple husbands. Polygamy is multiple marriages. Polygyny, that's what it is. Okay, yeah, because I was like, oh, okay. So polygamy is multiple marriages. So someone having multiple spouses. And then polygyny, which is generally what we see when you have, like I said, Mormons, Muslims, like that show that was on a few years ago, Big Love, that was polygyny. And polygyny is multiple wives. And then polyandry is multiple husbands.
Okay.
Which we don't see that often. It does exist. But it just, we don't see it as much because, patriarchy. So
exactly. Because the brothers can't deal with it.
Right. Patriarchy. So thank you, patriarchy. So so polygamy is multiple marriages. Like I said, polygyny is multiple wives, polyandry is multiple husbands. And so that's the difference of the term. So polygyny, polygamy, polyandry, they fall under the umbrella of non-monogamy. And actually even cheating falls under the umbrella of non-monogamy. So there's a difference between ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy and just non-monogamy. So even things like cheating or don't ask, don't tell, falls under the category of non-monogamy, but it doesn't really fall under the category of maybe like ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy because, we don't have the consent of everyone involved to say, hey, like, I know that you have other people.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot. But one thing that I'm noticing is from the way you've explained it, from most of the terms and for people who will engage in them, there's some sort of structure and understanding my husband is asking. Not my husband, my son. They have the same name as Francis. I'll get to your question in a minute, son. Thank you for watching. There's some structure and there's an understanding. And I would imagine with that structure and understanding comes some boundaries as well that are agreed upon by all parties involved. Would that be accurate?
Generally, yes. The thing about non-monogamy is specifically is it throws out the relationship script. We have like a relationship script, as we move through the world. So monogamy, they call it the relationship escalator, but it's a script. You meet someone, you fall in love, you move in together, maybe, you get married, you have the kids, you enmesh the lives, and, and it's like a boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Whereas like in non-monogamy, it's almost kind of like, I describe it as kind of like, it's like the world of relationships just becomes like this wild, wild west, and, or like an uncharted frontier. And so, and it becomes highly individualized, with like what it is that you want, because you're essentially throwing out the primary, societal relationship script and, building a blueprint or framework for your relationships, that's solely based on, what you want, what your needs are, what your desires are, and then also what the needs and the wants and the desires are of the people that you're interacting with. Some people move through non-monogamy with very, very structured rules and agreements and boundaries and then some people's non-monogamy doesn't have any of that, and they don't enter into any relationships where that's a need. To where they have to have these like kind of rigid frameworks, and we don't stay overnight with people. Some of boundaries that people or rules that people will have, or we don't go away for the weekend with anybody, or those kinds of things. So there are some people that move through it where that's what they want, or they have primary relationships. So it's like, okay, we're going to be the most important relationship. And then all the relationships that, we enter into outside of the one that we have are secondary or tertiary. So that's a thing. And then you have people that are like, no, like, the relationship that I'm in is the one that I'm have with myself. I am the only one who will decide what I can and cannot do with other people.
Right.
And they tend to get into relationships with other people that feel similarly, so that way they have that understanding of one another, and there's not that need or that desire for making those like structured frameworks as they move through it, because they just do not want to, they don't want to operate in non-monogamy in that way.
Right. Evita, I have to apologize. I did not read your bio when you first came on.
Fine.
I am so sorry. I'm going to read it right now. So, Miss Evita Lavitaloca Sawyers is a non-monogamy coach, speaker, educator, influencer, and author. She is the creator of today's Polyamory Reminder, and you're going to tell us about that a little bit later. She's the author of the soon-to-be-released Polyamory Devotional and the subject of the groundbreaking documentary Poly Love. She is Black, femme, queer, and passionate about all things relationship, sex, sexuality, identity, and promoting freedom for marginalized communities who are denied full access to the human experience. So that's Miss Evita. And I'm sorry, I should have read that at the very beginning. I apologize.
Okay. No worries.
So my son is asking a question. He's asking, how many wives do you have, or how many partners? I don't know, but anyway, that's his question.
So I don't have any wives. Okay. I do have a partner. My partner and I have been together for over 3 years. I have one. When I met him, I was married at the time. And my husband and I are currently in the process of transitioning our relationship. We're separating and divorcing, and now just moving into a co-parenting space. No, polyamory was not the cause of it. So I know that's like the first thing that people think of. When we talk about that, it was not the cause of it. And we have a very good relationship now. We're just, like I said, we're moving into a co-parenting space. But I do have one partner, and I've been like with him for 3.5 years. And then he has several partners. And then I have people that I date, that I see with no real regularity, but I wouldn't call them partnership. And so I have relationships that are casual. I have relationships that I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as casual, but they're not partners. And so, it's kind of, I'm very just, whatever me and a person decide to do with one another that works for us is available to me to do. And I'm the only one who's making those choices about who becomes what. To me and how I interact with people. And I don't make those choices for the people that I interact with. So they're also making those same choices for themselves.
So that sounds more in the category of an open relationship.
No, it's not. It's polyamory in the sense that I have the opportunity or the ability to create lasting partnerships. I just don't have any others at the time. But so it's not that it's open. It's my relationship is polyamorous. If I met someone today and, we fell in love and decided to enter into partnership, we could. It's more just right now at this period of time in my life, I'm not really seeing anybody. I'm not dating anyone. I got a bunch of other things going on. And so I just have not been in the scene, trying to meet and form partnerships with other people.
With that, the question I have is, how did you first become interested in polyamory? And what has your experience with the lifestyle? And what has
so there's like a running gag that a 2 Chainz song was how I got interested in polyamory, believe it or not. There was a joke. Once my husband and I entered into non-monogamy, we started with swinging actually first. So that was more about me like wanting to explore my sexuality, because at the time, like I'd known since I was a teenager that I wasn't straight completely, but just had never had an opportunity to explore that because I joined the military like right after high school, and at that time, being any kind of queer was grounds for removal.
Absolutely.
And so I never really got the opportunity to sort of explore my sexuality. And then right after I got out of the military, I met my husband and we got married, and I was really young. I was like 21. And so about 10 years into our relationship, I began to feel like I really wanted to sort of get a handle on my sexuality. And I really was wondering if I was a lesbian, because I was just like, I'm still feeling this desire to connect with women in this way. And, my relationship with him it wasn't bad, but it didn't meet a lot of my needs because we're just extremely different people, which is why we are divorcing. So we entered into non-monogamy with the like kind of idea that I would explore my sexuality and we would have like just some kind of naughty, spicy fun. You know, at the time I had a son who was going through pediatric cancer. So life was like really rough. And so we were just like, okay, like, you know, life is really shitty right now. Oh, I'm sorry. So I have a potty mouth. Life is really crummy right now. And so we need to have some fun. And so that's how we got into it. And there's a 2 Chainz song that goes, y'all been together 10 years. You deserve a menage. And so he would kind of like throw that out at me like jokingly. Because we had been together about 10 years. And so that was kind of like funny. And so the first thing we did is we just started to do stuff. No one really sat the other person down and said, hey, like, I'm interested in doing this thing. We just experimented. So like we went to the strip club together for Valentine's Day and it wasn't that bad. And I was just like, oh, okay. You know, he got a lap dance and I didn't really care, you know, and I'd gotten a lap dance. And then we, I had a friend who was in a Groupon of people who got together and they did like, you know, swinger events and things like that, or they would go to swinger parties. And so I was like, hey, let's go to this thing, you know? And so we went to that. And then once we got connected to that community, we would go to swinger parties, and that's essentially what we did. And swinging was very comfortable for me. I have a super high sex drive. I love having a variety of sexual partners. I don't think I think I could probably maybe be emotionally monogamous in that I only was emotionally connected to someone, but like sexually, I don't think I could ever be sexually monogamous. So I like having multiple sexual partners, you know, at one time. And so swinging was very, very comfortable for me. But it was not comfortable for my husband. He really struggled. He prefers to have an emotional connection to people that he sleeps with, and swinging is, you know, recreational sex. So more often than not, you're sleeping with people that you might be friends with, you know, if you know, but like you're not, you know, you don't have like an emotional bond with them. And certain things are set up in swinging so that those emotional bonds are not created, you know, because you're not, you know, that's kind of like the thing, you know, is you're supposed to be having recreational sex, but not really developing like emotional relationships with the people that you're interacting with. So swinging was very comfortable for me. It wasn't super comfortable for him. And so we went to a party once, and I remember this woman walked in, and she walked in with her boyfriend, and then her husband came in later, and it was like mind blowing to us. Like we were like, what? Like, you know, and they were all kind of hanging out and they were talking and laughing and, you know, kind of joking with each other. And it was like, so like revolutionary to us. And my husband it was a lot more appealing to him. Cause like I said, you know, swinging was hard for him. Whereas for me at the time, I very much saw like, sex is just like something that you do. To me, sex was like a bodily function. To me, sex is like peeing, eating, breathing, sweating. It's a thing that, you know, bodies do. And so like, I didn't really care, you know, that he shared his body, you know, with other people. Like that just didn't, you know, it's a shell. Your body's a shell. And so that didn't really bother me, but like things like his time, his affection, his regard, like those were things that I wanted to only be mine, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to quote unquote share with other people. Now I have a completely different philosophy about that. I don't believe you can share a human being at all because they don't belong to you, you know, so you can't share, you know, something that doesn't belong to you. But at the time that was my philosophy about it. And so, you know, polyamory was very appealing to him because he wanted the opportunity to develop those emotional bonds because, you know, he had a hard time with swinging. Whereas for me, I was like, and so we tried it initially. It was very volatile. I was not ready. And so we tabled it. And then we went back to it about 6 months after that because I had wanted the experience of being able to have romantic relationships with women. I had sex with plenty of women, but I'd never had a romantic relationship with a woman. And with the current framework and parameters of the relationship that we had, that was not possible. And so that's when we opened it up to say, okay, let's try polyamory and let's try, having the opportunity to, develop actual partnerships and bonds outside of the one that we had with each other. And it was really funny because most couples entering into non-monogamy that start with a heterosexual man and a bisexual woman will generally enter into non-monogamy looking for a triad, which is that triangle relationship you hear about. And honestly, the public face of polyamory and non-monogamy, what you usually see is triads. So you see like you, me, and her, or, various, like I think the show You on Netflix, they had a polyamorous couple and they were like trying to find a triad. And so that's usually what you see is a couple and they bring on a third, and that person gets together and they're with the both of them. And then, even that movie, Dr. Marsden and the Wonder Woman, which was about the creator of the Wonder Woman comic for DC, who was a polyamorous person. He had 2 wives. And so it's like there's a movie about that whole his life. It's a really good film, actually. But they presented them as a triad. And a triad is where 3 people are in a relationship and they're all connected, which is why it's called a triad, because it's a triangle. And so usually when there is a heterosexual man and a bisexual woman and they're looking to get into non-monogamy, they generally come into non-monogamy seeking a third, so seeking a woman that they both can be with. And we actually have a term for it. It's called unicorn hunting. And so a lot of couples come into non-monogamy unicorn hunting and looking for that magical unicorn, puzzle piece that will fit in and magically love them both the same and be attracted to them both the same and want to be with them both the same. And that's why they call it a unicorn, because it's super rare. It's really hard to find. But we entered into non-monogamy just wanting to kind of establish our own relationships. My husband and I were like, there's just no way that we're going to find a woman that we both like because we have completely different tastes in women. And so we were just like, you go find someone that you can be with. I'll go find someone that I can be with. And then randomly we were at a swinger party and met this woman who we both fell for, and she fell for both of us. And we were in that relationship off and on for about 2 years. And so the documentary that I was in, that relationship was the subject of that documentary. And that was very early in my polyamory journey.
Okay.
And then, and once that relationship ended, once we were open, and so then it was okay, even though that relationship was over, we didn't open up just to find that person. We opened up because the way I describe it to people is my husband and I were monogamous for 9 years and we were happy being monogamous with each other. But when you ask me, well, really when people ask me about monogamy, it's I could be monogamous, but why though? That's kind of how how I see it. It's I could, sure, but why? I don't really see a reason for it. In my experience, you can love multiple people and sleep with multiple people and spend time with multiple people, and it does not diminish what you share with any one person. No different than having multiple friends doesn't diminish what you share with your friends. And so it's I could be monogamous, but why is kind of how it is. And so once that relationship was over and we were open, we were just open. And so from that point on,
it was just once it was open. And you had a desire to be involved with other people anyway, so you continued along that vein. And it's interesting, something you just said about being able to love multiple people and all that. I think you have to have, first of all, you can't be jealous.
Nope, not true.
You could be jealous and involved in that. Because I could never be involved in I could not be involved in consensual non-monogamy. Okay, now we had infidelity within our marriage, so that's not ethical non-monogamy. That is infidelity. But I don't believe that I have the emotional makeup to be involved in a polyamorous relationship with my husband. And I don't think he could do it with me either. What do you think, babe? I don't know. Well, let me speak for the brother.
No, what do you think, babe? I don't believe that. I know I would have that jealous. No, could I consensually say it's okay?
Now, what about
No,
if there was you and I and another female? Could you do that?
Well, we were just talking about that earlier this morning.
Right.
My mindset of the kind of man I believe, yeah, I can be with you and another woman. I do not want to be with you and another man. It's just not my makeup to be in that kind of situation.
Well, and see, that's a common misconception is that everything is done together. So like,
That's
you're
what
like,
I
I
said
could be
this
with you
morning.
in a woman, but I couldn't be with you in another man. My husband was never with me and other men. Like he just, that was just not something, whatever I did with other men, I did away from him. It's not something that we did together, you know? So, you know, I mean, we've been in swinger, you know, situations where he was like there as I was interacting with someone else. But like, you know, when we moved into non-monogamy, he never connected with me and my other men partners ever, you know, so that was something that took place, you know, when I was with my other men partners, you know, and it didn't have anything to do with him. And there's also a common misconception that in order to do this, you cannot be jealous. I am here to tell you that my green-eyed monster is a beast. Okay. So I am a very jealous person, and not as much as I used to be. I've definitely worked a lot through that. I mean, I've been doing this now for over 10 years, but in the beginning, oh my God, it was horrible. It was really, really bad. And now, and I still get jealous. It still happens.
Like that Jonas Brothers song. I still get jealous.
Yeah. I still get very jealous. Well, not very. I do still get jealous. Jealousy still occurs. You just learn how to interact with it differently. And you learn tools on how to navigate it. Jealousy is a remarkable tool for self-discovery. Oh my goodness. It's, you know, I've learned so much about myself, my beliefs about love and relationships and my own self-worth, just from the simple act of bringing inquiry to why did this thing make me jealous? Why did I get jealous? Why did my partner going on a date with this person make me feel jealous? Or why did my partner, you know, telling me that, oh, you know, he saw this person and they were interesting to him. Why did that make me jealous? And when I inquire into it, I learn so many valuable things about myself, so many places that I need healing. And so, there's this misconception that in order for you to do this, you can't be jealous. And there are definitely polyamorous and non-monogamous people who just don't get jealous. That's just not, you know, in their emotional makeup. But, you know, I ain't one of them. So I'm definitely not one of them.
That is absolutely what I thought. Because I thought if you were someone who was extremely jealous, that this would definitely not work for you. But I want to ask Deanne and I'm sorry, baby.
Yeah, the question.
I want to ask them something.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
So what are your thoughts and feelings about polyamory and non-monogamy? And is it something that you would ever consider? Why or why not? Either one of you. Go ahead, Nick.
Goodness, I was just taking it all in because I'm learning taking notes here. It is interesting because, like I said, I've been on the periphery looking in and to find and actually talk to somebody who's actually living the lifestyle. So I'm not sure. I'm still taking it in. I'm really not sure.
Yeah,
I think I am that jealous person. I mean, I guess because for all my life I've been in outside of when I was in college and didn't want a relationship. Yeah, I've been in monogamous relationships, and I'm like, yeah, that would drive me crazy. And then, you know, like I said, I don't know if my makeup would let me do that. You know, right now. Like I said, I'm getting a lot of information. This is an interesting topic, and I'm learning a lot.
Okay. What about you, Deanne Weaver?
Yeah. So, to the question about would I? No, I don't think so. It's not who I am. It's not, not what I believe. And like, I'm interested to hear, you know, this is fascinating to me, but it's not something I'm really interested in pursuing for myself.
Yeah. And see, that's the beauty of it, because, you know, that old Sly and the Family Stone song, different strokes for different folks. Everything is not for everybody. But I think it's great that we can have these conversations and get understanding, because I believe that people who are outside of the lifestyle do have misconceptions and misunderstandings, like my husband did when we had that conversation this morning when our son was here, and we were talking about having polyamory with him and myself and another woman. And I said, well, yeah. Do I get to have another man too? No. And he said, no. I'm not going to be up there, two men balls banging up against each other. And I said, but baby, I don't think that's how they get down. But I think people outside have this idea. They have more idea of an orgy as opposed to having real relationships within the context of non-monogamy. Would that be accurate, Lavita?
Yeah, it's a lot of people just make it about sex and just go, you're just, it's this free for all and everybody's, sleeping together with everybody. And I mean, I go grocery shopping with my partners, my children know who my partners are and who my husband's partners were, when we were together. I've done, my partner's laundry, it's not as salacious as a lot of people like to make it out to be. These are partnerships, so people are,
you do regular life stuff.
Right, regular life stuff, going to the movies, having conflicts and working through them. These are all like regular life things. And while there are elements of it that, do have orgies and group sex and those are those things, but that's just a small portion of it. And not everybody is engaging in that does polyamory. There are some polyamorous people who are not interested and don't do anything like that at all. There are polyamorous people that are asexual and don't even have sex with anyone. And they still have romantic relationships and non-monogamous romantic relationships. So people tend to focus on the sex aspect of it as it's just this giant free-for-all where we're all just puppy piled in the bed, sleeping with anybody who, we can, get our hands on. I wish my life was like that. It is not. I can guarantee you it's not like that. So people tend to focus on the sex aspect of it or assume that if a man is in a relationship with a woman and the woman has other men, that man must be some kind of gay or bisexual. Not true at all. People tend to just hyperfixate on the sexual piece of it. And it's really just a small portion.
So, Evita, let me ask you this. What do you see as the benefits of having a polyamorous relationship?
For me, I like the maximum amount of freedom that is afforded to me. So I don't like some arbitrary rule hanging in the distance saying to me, I'm in a relationship with someone, but I met this person. We clearly have chemistry with one another. We clearly, would like to, explore that chemistry. But because this arbitrary rule in the distance that says, well, you can only share and exchange these things with this one person that you've designated that falls into this category, now you have to completely miss out on this opportunity to have this connection with this person. I'm like, but why? I still love this person. I still desire this person. I still want to be with this person. But I also want to be with this other person. I also desire this other person. And that doesn't change those two things for me. So I like having that freedom. Like I said, for me, the benefit of polyamory is definitely the self-discovery. I've learned so much about myself and so much about my beliefs and so much that I've had to unpack. Because a lot of monogamy in and of itself, the actual relationship model, is not a bad, relationship model. There are definitely people that are monogamous. So I'm not on this campaign as a polyamorous person to turn the whole world non-monogamous. No, if monogamy is what you want to do, wonderful, fantastic. Go find somebody to do monogamy with and y'all ride off into the sunset together. Yes, I'm here for it. But what I'm talking about that is harmful is there are a lot of things that we call toxic monogamy culture or compulsory monogamy. That perpetuate a lot of assumptions about relationships that are actually really harmful. Like jealousy is an indicator of love. That you get to, that if you feel uncomfortable about your partner's interaction with a person, that they are obligated to change that interaction or, whatever to placate your feelings. there are a lot of things about how we engage in relationships. I've even met monogamous people, especially in my coaching practice, that are like, look, I have no desire to be polyamorous. I don't want to interact with other people, but the way polyamorous people navigate their relationships is very appealing to me. And I find it hard to find that in the monogamous community. Because a lot of people in monogamy, they move through monogamy from a space of, I own this person, or this person is a possession of mine, And so there are a lot of people that are like, I don't really rock with that. Like, I don't really want to have multiple relationships, but I don't really want to, be in a relationship with someone where they want to view me as a possession. And they also want me to view them as a possession. That's not something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
So, non-monogamy has afforded me the opportunity to unpack a lot of those like kind of harmful and toxic beliefs. And I'm not saying that it's the only way to do that, because I believe that there are people that there's a movement that I've heard of called conscious monogamy, where people are choosing monogamy, but they're wanting to move through it in a much more conscious way, which is kind of the same thing of wanting to unpack a lot of these assumptions and things that we have. But I feel like it's a great opportunity to get a chance to sort of put that stuff under a microscope and say, well, how much of this do I actually believe, or how much of this do I think is healthy? Also, it has changed. Me being non-monogamous has changed how I interact in all of my relationships. So even I noticed that I love my children in a way that feels much more in alignment with how I want to be in relationship with my kids. Because of non-monogamy, because it's helped me to see them as not possessions. They don't belong to me. They are human beings. They have their own desires. They have their own will. They have their own, mindset for how they want their lives to live. And I feel like it's helped me to be a much better parent because it's allowed me to learn how to love the people in my life in a much freer way. Okay. And so for me, there are lots of benefits, to living non-monogamously, and then some of the ones that we tend to not want to talk about, but, I love being able to have sex with whoever I want to, whenever I want to. I love having that autonomy over my body. I love, just having an expanded relationship experience is very important to me. And that's not to say that, monogamy can't be an expansive relationship experience. It's just expansive in a different way.
In a different way. Yeah.
In a different way.
On that note, Frank has a question.
Could you touch upon if there are, or what are some of the potential pitfalls or dangers in this type of relationship?
I think that I would say more people, more problems. And so that's just real. The more people you add, the more perspectives you have to add, the more accommodations you have to make. And that can be dicey and tricky, especially if you have two partners and their desires are diametrically opposed. And so who do you defer to? And so that can be challenging. I think there are a lot of misconceptions and myths when people come into polyamory. And so that can be challenging to navigate. I think that non-monogamy can sometimes be isolating because unless you're in areas where there's a thriving polyamorous community, a thriving non-monogamous community, it can often be hard to find people to connect to around your relationship because, most of society is monogamous. And so that can be challenging. Non-monogamous people face a lot of censure, so sometimes your families don't understand or your friends don't understand. And that can be very isolating. Or people will tend to look at you as like, you become unsafe to them because they think that like, if you're non-monogamous, you're going to try to steal their spouse, which is always a strange one for me. Cause I'm like, honey, I don't want your dude. I don't want your person. I want someone who can be with me. Yeah. So they assume that, that you're okay with cheating or, all of these things, which most, non-monogamous people and ethically non-monogamous people would absolutely not have anything to do with someone who is cheating on their spouse in order to be with them. But, people can kind of get a little leery once they find that out about you. And then too, just, logistical things, while love is an infinite resource, time, money, energy is not, and so learning how to balance, how do you show up well for all your relationships, is tricky, to navigate. And, sometimes, somebody gets the short end of the stick and how do you deal with that? So, it's just I always tell people it's just basic human relating on steroids. That's what I'm gonna tell people, you know?
Yeah.
It's navigating multiple frameworks. We do this in our families, we do this in our jobs, we do this in our friend groups, you know. So, you know, it's not much different than that. It's just doing it in your romantic relationships, which is something that, you know, we just don't do as a society.
Yeah. So, Evita, I'm curious about your particular faith tradition or spiritual practice.
Geez, how would I describe that? I just consider myself woo-woo is what I am. So I will go outside and worship the moon. I pray to the universe, you know. Will pray to Orisha. I'll pray to my ancestors. I will, you know, go to a Buddhist temple and meditate. I'm just a spiritual person in general. I'm definitely a very spiritual person, but I don't subscribe to any one particular dogma. I will occasionally quote scripture. I have actually, and when I met my husband, we were in a extremely fundamental, borderline Christian cult. I always tell people it was a borderline cult. And that's actually where we met and got married. And we were in that faith and tradition for probably, you know, good 7-8 years. And I grew up Christian, as most, you know, African-American people in the United States do.
Yeah.
And so I grew up Christian. My mom is Christian. She still identifies as a Christian. She's actually a minister. And so she does that. But I've always been kind of pagan, you know, so kind of pagan, kind of woo-woo, you know. I want to go outside, you know, naked and howl at the moon. You know, and then collect, you know, rainwater and crystals. And, you know, I have little altars in my home and pray to a variety of deities, you know, any ones that resonate with me. And I also will be known to quote scripture on occasion, you know, and sing a gospel song. And so that's also something that I will do as well. So, and I'm comfortable in going. I can go to a Christian service and enjoy myself. And so, yeah, I connect to spirit, you know, in a very eclectic way.
So I'm wondering, given that you were raised Christian and your mom is a Christian minister, has your lifestyle impacted your relationship with your mom at all?
No. I do think it makes her a little uncomfortable, but my mom is also a very progressive Christian. Like I told you, my mom is a lesbian. She's queer herself. So she's a very progressive Christian. And I do think it makes her a little uncomfortable, mostly because my mom is very private. And so she and I live an extremely public life with my relationships. And so I think that makes her really uncomfortable because she's just like, why do people have to know about this? And why do I have to know about this specifically? And I'm very open with my mom about my life. So I will tell her about swinger parties that I go to. I'll tell her about kink events that I've gone to. And my mom is just like, why do we have to talk about this? Like, that's mostly what she says. It's like
TMI, right?
TMI, like, why do we have to talk about this? So, and I do think it makes her a little uncomfortable, but not so much to where it's like deeply impacted, like our relationship in any way. My mom is a very live and let live person. You know, and she's also very like, you know, whatever you do that freely. So in that regard, you know, it hasn't impacted our relationship. No.
Okay. All right. I just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
I do want to ask the one that my son put in the chat, and he says, does your partner have to approve of the other person that you hook up with?
No. I would never. There are some dynamics that's how it works. I would never enter into something where, you know, my partners had to say, yeah, you can interact with that person. No. And I don't do that with them. So they make their own choices about who they want to interact with. I make my own choices about who I want to interact with. Some of the people that they interact with, I like, and we have wonderful like my partner's partner. He has a partner, and she and I are like, me and you, us never part. That we really like that. I go places with her. She and I we schedule our own little like phone dates where we talk and hang out. And then she's actually coming over here, like I think next month, because she has a partner that lives over here, and she's coming to visit him. And so he's having a dance party, and so we're going to be at the dance party together. And my husband had a partner he had for several years, and even after he and I split up, She and I remained close friends and still talk to one another. And then I've had people that have had partners that I'm like, I want nothing to do with that person. Please do not bring me around them at all.
Yeah.
But I never approve of my partner's partners or deny their partners to where they start dating someone. And I'm like, no, you can't date that person. You need to end that relationship. And I don't enter into any relationship where someone feels like they would desire to have that power over me. That's a big no.
Okay.
That's
So,
not, but there are dynamics that do work like that. Yeah, there are.
Let me ask you this. So what advice, if any, would you give to someone who's considering entering into a polyamorous relationship for the very first time?
Do your homework. So join communities, read books, listen to podcasts. There's wonderful podcasts, Normalizing Non-Monogamy, Monogamish Pod. What's another one that's a really good one? Multiamory is a great podcast. So listen to podcasts, read your books, join communities, learn about the community, learn about the culture, because non-monogamy is a subset of humanity. We have a culture, we have social mores and all of those things. And so learn about those things. Don't go into it. I think a lot of people go into non-monogamy and they're just like, got to catch them all. Like they're like Pokemon. They're trying to grab as many partners as possible and, whatever. And like, don't focus on that initially or even at all. To me, the journey of non-monogamy, the most rewarding thing has been, the ways in which it's helped me to develop as a person. Partnerships have come and gone. And that is a benefit and something that I do enjoy, but it's like, to me, it's not the sole benefit. When I make my journey through polyamory about what it's doing in me, then I'm a lot more at ease with like my current state, which I just have one partner right now. And, in a different time in my polyamorous journey, I would have been really bothered by that. I've been like, okay, I got to find somebody else. Whereas now, polyamory for me is not about how many partners that I have. It's just having the freedom to have the autonomy to choose, who I am in partnership with and how many partnerships that I have, whether it's one person or, four. It's a very individual journey. And I think a lot of times when couples enter it together, they enter it with this like mindset that we're going to want the same things out of it, that it's going to impact us the same, that we're going to have the same experience. And no. To me, I call that the uncoupling or the unbreaking, the breaking apart. Like, when my husband and I got into non-monogamy and it really began to zero in on me that, oh, this is a highly individualized journey, and we kind of became aware of this concept of like, oh, we are not two people that are one flesh. Even in our marriage vows, the two shall become one flesh, which is totally fine if that's your philosophy. But, in non-monogamy, even if you're dating the same person, you will have a completely different experience with that person, even if you're both dating the same person. And so it's a highly individualized journey. And so it was this moment where I was like, oh, I felt this almost like a breaking apart to where we became two individuals that were in a relationship with each other, but we were two individuals.
Gotta exit real quick. Oh.
Sure. So it's a highly individualized journey, and you need to understand that even if you go in with a partner, it's best for you to learn, what your lane is through navigating it, and be flexible. What I thought I wanted from it when I first started is like nowhere near where I'm at with it today. And so it's important to be flexible, not only flexible with yourself, but also flexible with your partners. I think people get into it with partners and they're like, okay, we both want this thing. And then later on down the line, the partner goes, I'm realizing that I actually want something different. And, people feel really betrayed and they're just like, oh, but you said, you wanted this thing. And it's like, yeah, I said that 2 years ago, But now I have more information and I want something different. So remember to be flexible. And to not rush, take your time as you navigate through it. I think people they go in and they just plunge right into it. And you can do a lot of damage. You can do a lot of damage to yourself. You can do a lot of damage to the people that you're interacting with. You can also do a lot of damage to your partners if you enter in with a partner. When people are not being, being intentional, conscious, and not just like, running in through it like a bull in a china shop.
That makes sense. I got it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the polyamory reminder in a minute, but I just want to ask Deanne or Nicole if you have any questions or comments or anything that Evita has spoken on thus far.
The only thing I was thinking was I was hoping in monogamous relationships people could be that honest, because it seems like it's a lot of lying on the other side. People have things that they want to do and they'll lie about it. Where in her community, yeah, they're they're upfront, honest about it. So, and I find on my side it'd be different if I met a man and he could be really honest about what he wanted in a relationship, and then you wouldn't have. I think you wouldn't have the cheating, and you wouldn't have the deception and everything. If you were open and honest, this is who I am. This is what I need. You have this open conversation in the beginning, and then if you're not for each other, you go your separate way. You're not wasting time. So that's what I'm getting out of it. When you meet people were open and honest about, because you were saying that like it took you 7 to 8 years to decide this is really what you wanted. You put it on the back burner and that kind of thing. But people were honest from the get-go. You wouldn't be wasting so much time, and it wouldn't be lying, it wouldn't be cheating in this relationship, because there's a space for these kind of people that want to do this kind of thing. So why enter into a marriage knowing you don't want to be there, or a monogamous relationship knowing good well you don't want to be monogamous? So that's what I'm getting from it. It would be refreshing if we could all be adults and
just tell the truth from the outset. Yeah. That makes sense, because then you give the other person the opportunity to make an informed choice as to whether or not they want to remain, or they want to say, I care about you. You are a great person, but this is not for me. And then just bounce. Right. And then you could make your own choice. Yeah.
And then, in healthcare, I encounter all kinds of people. I have to take care of all kinds of people. So knowing how they think, will be really helpful, because sometimes I'm spending my whole shift with somebody. And she was talking to me, I'll say, I can't say, well, can I call your husband or wife or something like that? They may have a partner. Now I kind of know what that means. That could mean a whole lot of things.
It could be a couple of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I interact with all kinds. I never know what's flying through that door to ER. I don't never know who's coming to get a colonoscopy or coming, post surgery. I don't know. So
and Nicole, think of how many times in patients that we've taken care of where the patient will be there and their spouse will be there, and then a half an hour later the girlfriend or boyfriend will show up.
True.
And typically those are typically not ethical non-monogamous relationships, but those are cheating relationships. But if it is a polyamorous relationship, then perhaps the hospital staff won't be giving them the side eye when you have a patient who has their 2 or 3 partners there.
That's the way they choose to live their life. I'm there to take care of you.
Right.
That's the only thing I'm there to do. And there's no need to be disrespectful or rude to people. God loves them too.
That's right. Absolutely.
So I'm learning a lot and everything. And thank you. I love the way you presented it, because it's clicking for us. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then all these terms are making sense to me. And I was like, oh, so there's a name to that. Oh, okay. And then I do know people in these kind of relationships, but I feel like they got to be hidden because somebody's going to judge them for who they are.
Yeah.
So
I think probably
I've learned a lot.
And I think as more of these conversations take place, I'm hoping there'll be fewer people who are in non-monogamous relationships who feel like they have to do it on the DL, and that they can be open with it and they don't have to try to hide it. So, Deanne, do you have anything you want to add?
I just had, one of the questions that came up is because I really do mean what I said when I said I grew up in the country under a rock. Well, not under a rock, but but you mentioned something about like this, the culture of, like as people are entering into this, there's certain aspects to the culture. So what are some of the things that people would need to like know or could be a surprise to someone as they enter into this culture?
I think that, like I said, one of the things that people do enter into non-monogamy with is this mindset that it's mostly about sex. You know, and so people will come into non-monogamy or into polyamory specifically with this mindset that like, oh, I'm going to get to have sex with all these people, you know, that I want to have sex with, which there is a non-monogamous space for that. That is swinging, like, you know, and so there is a space for that. And if that's where your primary focus is, then you can swing, you know, and you can be in that, you know, facet of it. But I think that a lot of people come in and they think that, like I said, it's about sex. Another thing that I feel happens is people come into the non-monogamous community, but they bring a lot of monogamous conditioning in with them, you know? So they come into the non-monogamous community, but they come in with a lot of monogamous conditioning. People also come in like with this priority, we call it couple privilege, or this prioritization of the couple. And so, you know, they come into the non-monogamous community and they are like, okay, well, we want to, you know, we want to be non-monogamous, but we only want to dip a toe in, or we want to, but as you know, when anything happens that's threatening to our relationship, you're going to get thrown away. And so they sort of move through the community hurting people because, you know, they haven't really done the work to sort of go like, okay, you know, yes, we're in this relationship that we want to preserve as we're doing this, but we're also interacting with other human beings, and they have hearts, and they have, you know, desires, and they have, you know, wants. And like, how do we show up to, you know, making sure that our relationship remains secure while also not being crappy to these people that we're interacting with in order to, you know, accomplish that. So like, that's something that I think people need to kind of be aware of. Also, a lot of times, you know, people are entering into the non-monogamous community, and it may be their first time that they're interacting with someone who's, you know, queer, or someone who's trans, or, you know, and so, you know, learning how to be, you know, competent, and like you said, that cultural humility, cultural competence, because you're interacting with people from communities that you've probably, you know, had minimal to no interaction with. And so oftentimes people can bring in a lot of isms, you know, into the non-monogamous community. Or like I said, you know, people will come into the non-monogamous community and they won't know what an asexual is, or what a demisexual is, or someone who's aromantic, or and so, like, you know, the community is not like the outside world, you know. It's not supposed to be, you know, it functions differently. And it's important that, you know, before, you know, people come in and just start going, oh, I just want to be here, you know. It's like, you know, observe, pay attention, you know, see how the community functions, you know, see the different things that we talk about, you know, is harmful to our community, and, you know, what things that we, you know, try to avoid happening. You know, consent is a really big thing in our community too. So like, you know, beef up your consent understanding and your consent work, you know, because, you know, the non-monogamous community, we try to talk about, you know, being more consensual, you know, removing assumption, you know, from your relationships as you're moving through relationships, and kind of, you know, getting to the space to where you're like, here is this person across from me. Here is what I want to do with you. What do you want to do with me? What can we enter into agreement with about how we want to be in relationship with one another? As opposed to just moving through going, okay, well, you know, because these people are partners, they must do X, Y, Z, you know? And it's like, well, no, they don't actually, because that's not what their partnership entails, you know? And so, yeah, so that's probably what I would say is the most thing that happened is, you know, just because a person recognizes that like the societal framework does not work for them and they're no longer interested in participating in it, does not mean that they just automatically now are able to, you know, get into the community where that societal framework is not functioning, and just be able to make that shift and not bring a lot of the stuff from that societal framework functioning into a community where we're actually actively trying to, you know, lift that off of ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you to talk about the Polyamory Reminder, and please tell me about this devotional that you're in the process of creating.
In 2020, I challenged myself to see if I could do like a daily polyamory reminder. And I was already doing some like mild like content creation, just not a whole lot, but I would post videos and I would, make posts in groups. I had the documentary. I'd also done a couple of conferences and where I spoke. And so I would do like a little jewel of like non-monogamy wisdom, either from my own life or what I saw in the community. And so in 2020, we're all, stuck in the house because of the pandemic. Yeah. I kind of like challenged myself, is it possible that I can write one of these a day? And the goal was to get a full 365. And then once I got 365 of them, I would compile them into a book that was kind of like a polyamory devotional, similar to like the scripture devotionals where you have the scripture for the day. Usually there's like a little commentary about it. And then that way you can kind of pick it up. You can either, read it, day by day, or you can pick it up whenever you need to. And I kind of like that framework because, I like to read. Actually, I love to read. But, I feel like this like newer generation of humans, reading is not, as much of a thing as it is or as it used to be.
Yeah.
And then two, a lot of the polyamory books that are out there, they're like a longer form, format where it's like you have to read it, from beginning to end. And so sometimes that can be daunting for people. And so I liked the idea of creating something to where like a person could, read it every day. They could, read it once a week. They could not read it for months and pick it up and just open it up and read it and, glean something from it. I kind of liked that as a format. And so I started today's polyamory reminder, with the intention that I was going to develop 365 of them and then compile them into one tome. And that's what I did. So and that's actually how I became, more popular or more known is I would just do those once a day. And, like I said, everybody was stuck in the house. And so people would share them.
Something to read.
And then it just became, something that I was known for.
Yeah. Well, Miss Evita, I want to thank you for showing up for us here and educating us on this evening, because, as I said, I believe that people outside of the community just have preconceived notions and misconceptions about the lifestyle. And this was great. I learned a lot. I think Deanne and E. Nicole learned a lot, and hopefully those who have tuned in this evening and who will watch later have learned a lot. And anyone who's on, if you have not already, I invite you to share, like, subscribe, the usual stuff that you do when you are on video. And Evita is on Facebook. Are you, and you're under Lavitaloca Sawyers on Facebook, right?
Yeah, Lavitaloca Sawyers on Facebook. On Instagram, it's Lavitaloca34. And so that's where most of my content is on Instagram. That's generally where I post at. I also have a link tree that has, links to various podcasts that I've been on. Links to if you want to book a session with me. Because like I said, I do non-monogamy coaching. And so if you're in a couple and you're like, oh, we want to pursue non-monogamy, but we don't know how to start. Or we started pursuing non-monogamy and it's not going all that well. And so we're trying to course correct. You can book a session with me. And I also have just some other things that are there, different articles that I've submitted to, and a link to the documentary as well. And so that's on my Instagram. That's at Lavitaloca34. And then, like I said, on Facebook, I'm Lavitaloca Sawyers.
Okay. I want to thank you again. And Deanne and Nick, as always, thank you guys for showing up. And so we'll be back next week. I forgot what our topic is for next week. Hold on. Let me just check my calendar real quick. Hold on one second. Oh, next week we're going to talk about having tit for tat in your relationships and how that can ruin your relationship. Because some couples do that. One person does something, well, they're going to one up them. Their partner's going to one up them. And if you don't do this, I'm not going to do that. And I particularly don't think that that is healthy in a relationship. But we're going to talk about that on next week, how tit for tat can ruin your relationship. So
yeah, actually, it's funny that you bring that up because tit for tat is terrible in non-monogamy also. And when I first got into non-monogamy, I was very tit for tat. So if he went on a date, I had to go on a date. If he spent the weekend with somebody, I had to spend the weekend with somebody. And it was not sustainable. And it ended up not being. It's not a good way to move through a relationship. It didn't work well. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully you'll tune in on next week, Evita, and join us. And thanks again. I'm glad for the connection, and I'm glad that I saw you and that I reached out to you and that you responded. Because listen, my children know I will contact anybody and ask anybody anything. Because my mother taught me, listen, a person can only say yes or no.
Right.
So I appreciate you, Evita, and I appreciate you being so open and so willing to teach us and educate us and share your information and your life with us. Because I know it was an easy thing to do.
Yeah, all right, no, thank you for having me.
And I'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
So I'm going to end the broadcast right here, but you